Bokura wa Minna Kawaisou.
I believe you will very much so enjoy this show because of enjoyment of the romantic comedy genre. This show consistently proves that it can run with some of the giants of the rom-com genre, even though it is not well known. From the fun, varied cast of characters that don't really just fit one archetype, to the hilariously cute moments of watching how our main character interacts with his love interest in an attempt to get close to her. This anime shows growth of all its cast in a very roundabout way in order to make them seem like the best of friends who only met and became friends through their circumstance. P.S. Love the comedy, and please reply, Digi. Well, here's your reply. I almost didn't put this show on this list because of the fact that I was trying to keep this strictly to shows that I dropped more than a year ago, because generally if I dropped a show pretty recently, there's a good chance I still feel the same way about it as I did when I dropped it. And this one's just barely under that threshold. I dropped this show when I was making my my video about the things I want from anime romance, because I think I mentioned this in the video that like the hardest thing about the show was feeling like I didn't care if the main characters got together at all. Like the main girl of this show is very cute. And like immediately I was interested in her from the OP, which seems to give her a ton of character. It presents her as this this girl who's like constantly getting lost in the stories of books, and that she's like kind of in her own head in these fantasies and stuff. But the show doesn't really present her that way. It just presents her as a girl who reads books all the time and seems to be largely oblivious of the main character entirely, like over the early episodes. Like they have a couple little run-ins, but it's mostly the main guy just kind of pining over her. And I didn't really like him. He seemed like why would I want this guy to get with this girl? Like I don't feel like I want to support his chasing after her. And then the other characters are all just kind of like one-note little wacky side characters. So, yeah, I only made it 4 episodes in. I didn't like outright dislike the show. I was in the middle of marathoning a ton of rom-coms, so, you know, it kind of just got swept under the rug in a mad dash to get through as many of them as I could. So the upside is that because I watched 4 episodes of this, and I watched them fairly recently enough, from what I remember, it doesn't seem like I'd have to watch those 4 episodes again. So I'm just going to continue this one right where I left off, start with episode 5, and see if it picks up from the time when I dropped it. Alright, well, I watched 2 more episodes of Bokura wa Minna Kawaisou, bringing me up through episode 6. It was kind of exactly as I remembered it, and but now I can get into exactly what it was that turned me off. So the best things that this show has going for it is that the artwork is gorgeous. Like the character designs are really good. The 3 main girls are very attractive. Everything's very what's the word I want to use? Both detailed and verdant is a word I would use for it. Everything's kind of shiny, and there's just lots of color detail, lots of digital processing effects and stuff on everything. Everything looks very, very pretty, but nothing moves. It's very much one of those shows where they're using the gorgeousness of the character art and the background art to cover up the fact that it's not really animated. It's just a bunch of still images. It's basically just moving manga. And most of the show is just sort of verbal humor. Like, it's mostly humor that's entirely based on what characters are saying, and there's not much done to make it visual. Most of what is done to make it visual is sort of generic. Like, a character will say a line that's supposed to be funny, and then there'll just be, like, the text of what they're saying on screen. Or just, like, the basic anime visual effects, like big water droplet, or their face goes dark, or the background turns into a more simplistic design. It's just it's the most standard issue anime effects possible, and it just kind of looks like a manga in motion. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, but the jokes are not funny. Mostly because of the timing, and it really reminds me of the anime of Working, which is another one. It's similar in tone to this and similar in style of humor, but Working was a 4-panel comic, and I really liked the manga. Like I enjoyed Working as a manga because the punchlines were just quick, and they were just little cute, funny punchlines with a bunch of these wacky characters. It eventually got old because the jokes are very one note, but the timing worked well in 4-panel comics. And the problem I had with the anime adaptation was that it always felt like there was an extra beat. Like, instead of it being panel 1, 2, 3, 4, it always felt like there was a 5th unnecessary beat that ruined the punchline. Like, there's a moment where you know what the punchline will be that comes right before it's actually said. Or it takes a character so long to say the punchline that it doesn't have impact. You know, that it's like a whole phrase a character is saying. And I think this show has that problem with the flow of the comedy. There's no punch, there's no impact, everything takes a little bit too long, it's a little too overdone. It feels like jokes that were meant to work in manga form, and even then, they're not clever. It'll just be like, you know, this character is a masochist, so he's constantly he's constantly saying how, oh, I love it when you say sadistic things to me. You know, like, that's like all his dialogue. That's the whole character. And other people go, whoa, he's weird, you know. It's just it's about as bog standard as anime comedy could get. And the romance element is just so weak. I can barely even call this a rom-com. Like, I would only say this is as much of a rom-com as Working is. Both of them are really more focused on the sort of slapstick comedy of having these 5 wacky personality types, and Working has way more characters, which even that show can be kept more interesting than this one because there's just so little to work with. Each character kind of has exactly one joke that's constantly, you know, played with in this show, so there's really nowhere to go. And as gorgeous as the characters are, just watching them sort of slide around the screen to create these little jokes, it's not that entertaining. You know, if it was more focused on just the romance of the main guy and girl, it might be better. But the guy has so little personality that it's really hard to care about whether or not he'd hook up with the girl, you know. But there are some other things I kind of like. I like how the characters skew older. The 2 main characters are the youngest in the cast. Everyone else is older. I like that the other two girls, A, are not into the main character, and B, are like experienced. They both have their own relationships that they go on. You know, they're both like sexually experienced adults, which is nice in anime. But they're also just kind of cartoon characters who don't really have any narrative significance. They're mostly just there to tell jokes. So, you know, they don't do that much for me. Yeah, it's like the main things about, like, if this show wasn't so pretty, I don't think it would be one that like garnered any attention at all. Like, I certainly would not have sat through even as many episodes as I did if not for the fact that the character designs are so attractive and the artwork is so attractive that it's easy to sort of get lost in it, but then, like, moment to moment, nothing really interesting is happening. And I never laughed at it, not once. Like, none of the humor worked for me at all. There's, like, a couple moments where I maybe cracked a little smirk, you know? But I don't think it's funny, and it doesn't have enough character to hold up without being funny. So, yeah, I can't see myself finishing it. And that is that. So, this was a shorter one, but I'll see you in the next one.